Good morning.
The order of February 13, 2019 meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Services. Secretary call the roll.
Yes, Ms. Irvine will not be in today. Ms. Alvarez-Rosales,
Here.
Mr. Peterson,
Present.
Chairman Miller.
Here.
We have a quorum with 3 members of the committee present.
Our first order of business, approval of the committee minutes of October the 10th, 2018. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Secretary call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes.
The minutes are approved with 3 yes votes.
Our next order of business is review of an ordinance authorizing extension of bus route number 111A for Michelle. Mike.
Good morning. Morning, members. The ordinance before you this morning would authorize the extension of bus route 111A to serve the newly opened Pullman Community Center on Doty Street. The recently opened community center is a 135,000 square foot building housing recreational and educational activities for youths, including indoor soccer, football, and baseball facilities, basketball courts, as well as areas for tutoring and computer-based learning spaces. In addition to serving the new community center, the bus route extension will also connect this bus route to 5 additional routes at the bus terminal at 103rd and Stony Island, increasing connectivity and we believe bolstering ridership for this route. This route extension will cost $450,000 annually, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have on this item.
No, I don't know if you've had a chance to go out and see the facility, but it's incredible.
I actually did. I went out there and visited them. We went in and reviewed where the bus would stop, and I talked to the management out there a little bit. It's a beautiful, very large,
Yeah.
very nice new facility.
And I think giving the kids the opportunity 365 days a year to have a place to go, a safe place to meet and play, it's just great that we're doing this.
Since there's no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend the board approval of this item to be placed on the
So moved.
I'll second.
secretary.
Yes, Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 3 yes votes. We just need a motion to adjourn, sir.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second it?
I'll second it.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So we are adjourned. Let me know when you're ready for the next committee. Are you ready? Yes.
Oh, for this,
Oh, I am very sorry. That was my mistake. We can reconvene the meeting then. I am very,
because I had it after mine. I have it on
that
mine.
is completely my mistake because I never wrote it in Reverend Miller's notes.
No,
So I apologize for that.
okay. I thought maybe I had it wrong, so I just wanted to make
No,
sure I
no,
didn't
you
have
had
it.
it, you
Okay.
had it right. I got confused with the change that we were making during the board
Yes.
meeting because I thought about it and that's where I got the two confused.
Got it.
So let's reconvene the meeting. Let's take a vote to reconvene the meeting. A motion to reconvene.
So moved?
Second.
Mr. Peterson, yes. Ms. Alvarez-Rosales, yes.
Yes.
Yes, we're reconvened.
Thank you. I apologize for the confusion. As many of you know, we had a somewhat unusual weather event occur near the end of January that I wanted to take a few minutes to just brief the board on what happened and also, I think, the efforts that CTA engaged in. I should preface this by saying that CTA continued to operate in spite of the fact that we had a snowstorm followed by some of the coldest weather we've ever experienced in the history of this city. To say that it was an amazing effort on behalf of all the CTA employees here would probably be an understatement. There were a number of transit systems that were not able to continue operating. Metro had to suspend some service. South Shore Rail Line had to suspend some service. But CTA kept running, and not only did we keep running, we kept running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As I indicated to you, the temperatures in the middle of the cold spell dropped to minus 27 degrees with wind chills of minus 50, creating a very severe situation not only for our customers, but also for all the employees who have to actually be out in this weather to basically provide the service to our customers. And I wanted to have the team of people who basically were responsible for leading that effort come up and give you their explanation of sort of how we prepare for these kind of events, and also what we had to do to support not only our CTA service, but also the rest of the city, because we actually provided support to a number of other services that were occurring as a result of the emergency situation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Don Bonds, who's going to walk you through both the winter prep process that we engage in and then the actions we had to take during this extreme weather condition.
Good morning. My name is Donald Bonds. I'm the Chief Transit Officer here at CTA. So as you know, during the winter, we start preparing months before. So around the September timeframe, we start our winter prep on our buses and our trains. And during that process, of course, we inspect the buses, and we really start preparing for the event during that time by inspecting our vehicles for various components on those vehicles. And that includes thorough inspection on the bus equipment. Also, the heating systems are gone through on the buses, and it's a pretty in-depth process that we use to prepare our equipment. That's from checking, fan belts, water hoses, radiator hoses, anything that could possibly happen during that winter time frame. Also, each day during these type of weather events, we plan our buses by starting them up, ensuring that they're warm when the operators show up to move out for service, because some buses leave the garage and go right into service. So they're prepared for customer use at that time. On our rail side, like our buses, we do the same thing. And on the rail cars, we actually take a very close look at heating systems once again, and also our de-icer systems are installed, our sleet scrapers are installed on the trains during this time frame. And then we go to, we pay close attention to our heating systems and our doors. Because on our rail cars, because of the age of a lot of our rail cars, the door systems give us a lot of trouble. So we spend a lot of time doing winter door prep on rail cars. We do a lot of work during the events to ensure that the doors are working properly while they're out in service. And, our big thing for our rail cars, because of the age of the fleet, we try to keep them moving. So you will see us moving trains throughout the night, even when, certain lines close down, we'll still operate on those lines just to ensure that the railway is clear. Because once we get trouble on the third rail, it just leads to bigger problems for us on our rail system. So I'll turn it over to Bill.
So one of the unique things about the Chicago Transit Authority and the way we address inclement weather events is we've found over the years in refining our policies around this that the best defense in these circumstances is a good offense. And we continue to find that running our service is the best way to keep our system clear of issues. So we don't have to worry about digging out our trains from rail yards or having to reopen our rail lines, because we continue to use our service to break apart ice on the third rail as well as push snow. We often support these events by clearing snow and ice from our switches, which allow our trains to move from one track to another. We manually exercise them throughout the event to keep them fluid and moving, as well as we closely monitor the service on our bus system. We have an extensive plow fleet that we use to plow our facilities, our bus turnarounds, and provide assistance occasionally with the city to keep our bus service regularly moving and assist it throughout the city as it moves. And on our overnight hours, we continue to pressure forward similar levels of service, to protect those lines that do shut down for those few hours in those windows. Despite our many efforts throughout this event to prepare for it, we did have some minor incidents that occur, most of which were unnoticeable to our customer or were quickly resolved, and part of our preparations to have crews on standby to respond to these incidents. We had suspended most of our outside work because we did not want to risk putting our crews out in those elements more than we had to, which allowed us to take those resources and double up those crews so that they would have minimum exposure in responding to these incidents and be able to cycle them in and out throughout the event. We also looked at strategic locations and material so that we could quickly respond and resolve these issues as they did occur.
Also, as you may have seen on the news, CTA provided a lot of resources to help with various missions throughout the city. So some of the things that we did was CTA assisted the Department of Family and Sports Services by providing warming buses for their outreach services. And that happened almost pretty much every night of the week. We also provided some assistance to O'Hare Airport for some warming buses because of, issues that they had with trying to keep passengers that are waiting to get to their parking lots in various places because their people mover system is currently out of service, I believe, for a year. So we assisted also there. And also we provided quick reactionary force buses throughout the CTA. I believe we had 20-plus buses that were on standby to react to life-type situations where if the heat went out in a building, we would deploy a bus so those residents would have somewhere to stay warm until their heat system was fixed, or if there was gas leaks throughout the system, whatever's required or whatever responses that the city needed, CTA was on call to be able to provide those services. And also, for the public safety briefings, we attended those daily at the OEMC. We participated in city briefings with the rest of the city agencies throughout the event. And also, the CTA was a part of at least 5 press conferences that the mayor held at OEMC just to brief the public on our responses, and CTA played a key part in being a part of those briefings.
Georges, good morning. Brian Steele, VP of Communications and Marketing. Customer communications is something that we take seriously 365 days a year. We always strive for timely, helpful, meaningful communications with our customers, but we felt it was even more important to do so during Chillinois, which I believe the week was referred to. As such, we really stepped up the level and frequency of the customer communications we put out. Even before the cold weather set in, we put out reminders via our syndicated alert system and on our digital screens, just reminding people of the common sense tips of dressing warmly, wearing layers, knowing your route ahead of time, knowing what the alternatives could be in case there was a service disruption. We also felt it was really important to remind our customers that we were running all of our weekday services. We were running on a regular schedule. Other rail agencies had to adjust their schedules. CTA remained on its schedule. And then the last item that you see on the screen, when we did experience an issue, we wanted to let our customers know what that issue was and what we were doing about it. It's hard to see from the slide, but there are pictures of Mr. Mooney and some of his crews out fixing an issue that occurred on January 30th. When we put out these communications, the customer response was very positive. We also did social media via our Instagram, which is our newest social media channel. This particular post reminded people all the things that we do, as Mr. Bonds mentioned earlier, to prep our fleet for the winter weather. And again, our customers were very appreciative. Unsolicited, we got positive response after positive response for customers thanking CTA for the hard work it does, the commitment that it has to its customers. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but we did see an issue. This was an issue that we had at the Logan Square station on the evening of the 29th, I believe it was. We wanted to show customers that we were out there working, that while they were sleeping, our crews were working to make sure that their service was running in the morning. Once again, the customer response was overwhelmingly positive. Something that, as many of you are involved in the social media sphere know, positive comments on social media don't always come, especially as it relates to a transit agency and transit service. So it was really, we very much appreciated people recognizing the efforts that we put forth. Again, another example of an issue that came up on Harlem on the Blue Line, where we were out in the wee hours making repair, letting our customers know what we encountered, what we did to fix it. And unsurprisingly, or maybe a little bit surprisingly, the response was overwhelmingly positive once again. We also wanted to thank our customers. President Carter mentioned this in his press conference with the mayor. We take very seriously our responsibility to provide transit services even when the weather was like it was during that week. Even though the advice was stay home, stay inside, don't travel unless you need to, we understood that some people still had places to go, and we took our responsibility seriously to get them there. So we just put out a really simple thank you. We appreciate you relying on us. And again, the customer response was very, very positive, thanking us. Thank you for answering our prayers, as one person noted on their social media feed. Thanking our workers was also a top priority. President Carter and the mayor went out to the Kedzie Garage on the morning of the 31st and surprised the workers there. Workers who were working, obviously, all shifts in some very challenging conditions. Mayor and President Carter spent a good bit of time there, going person to person, hearing their stories, thanking them for their commitment. One of the nicest things was the mayor actually brought breakfast to the workers there. On his way over to the event, he stopped at McDonald's and got some breakfast treats. We have an embedded video that I won't play, but it's a video of him engaging the workers. Mayor's office tweeted it out, and not shortly thereafter, the McDonald's Corporation stepped in and thanked the mayor and thanked the CTA for their service. One of the nicest shows of support we got was actually from our transit peers in New York City. One afternoon, we got a call from the rail control at the MTA saying, hey, we're sending a bunch of pizzas to the men and women in your control center because we know you guys are working really hard to do this. We know firsthand how difficult it is to do what CTA is doing. So they sent over these pizzas as a gesture of appreciation. We wanted to thank them publicly via social media. And again, on this one, we got a lot of positive customer comment and appreciation for CTA services.
Brian, I've been here almost 10 years. I think that's the first time that we've ever gotten, not just, from the New York Transit Authority, but I think any transit authority to my knowledge. That is awesome. That's great.
I think it speaks to how severe the weather conditions were, and I think even within our industry, there's an appreciation of what it took to keep service running in spite of those conditions. And I dare say that there are very few systems that would have been able to do that. There are a couple of additional points that I want to make. Many of you may have seen news media coverage of fire on tracks as part of the way to deal with some of the challenges of this weather. Those were Metra tracks. They were not CTA tracks. My understanding is that particular video got worldwide coverage to sort of amplify the impact of what was happening with the weather here. At CTA, we actually have heat switches or heaters in our switches that allow us to do the same thing as what they do with the fire. Not to say that it doesn't create its own set of challenges for us in weather like this, but we have gotten away from just lighting our tracks on fire as a way to address that. The other point I wanted to make was I think Bill kind of skipped over sort of what his people were doing. One of the challenges that we have in weather like this is we get cracked rails. This extreme cold, basically the steel becomes brittle and it just breaks. And what it takes to basically deal with that is, Bill's team has to actually go out there, analyze the situation, determine what repair can be made to address it, and then basically fix it right there on the spot. At least a temporary fix. Many times we'll come back later to put in a new section of rail to replace the rail that broke. But under those conditions, we're dealing with the fact that there's service still running through the system. His people have to be out there basically, welding and putting together the pieces that will actually allow the trains to continue to operate over that portion of the track. And it was in conditions that I would say for any of us would view as pretty much unbearable. And so when he was talking about doubling up shifts and doing things like that, it was really intended to really try to mitigate to some degree the amount of time that our people had to spend out in that weather doing those kind of repairs. The other thing that we did is that we kept our employees in warm areas. As Bill indicated, we had them spaced throughout the system, but we kept them someplace where they could just be warm until we needed to deploy them to actually take care of a problem. That way we had the ability to respond quickly, but we're not keeping them exposed to elements while we're doing that. That is also something that we told our customers that they should do. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not CTA should have run the amount of service that we were running under those circumstances, particularly given the ridership challenges that were occurring since everything was closed. From my perspective, just like everything else we talked about, this was a public safety issue. For the people who had to be out there and who had to basically use CTA to get to whatever it was they needed to go, the longer you had to stay out there, the more exposed you were to the elements and the more you were at risk of some sort of health problem occurring as a result of that. So it was important to me that we try to keep our service running as normal as possible so we could mitigate the amount of time people had to stay in that cold weather to allow them to get to where they want to go. And so while it would have been easier for me to basically reduce service, go to a weekend schedule or something like that, we committed ourselves to continue to run the level of service that was necessary to meet the needs of the people who were out there, while, as Don indicated, battling our own challenges of the fact that we have a very old system and very old equipment that was also obviously being impacted by this weather. In spite of all the preparation that we do in advance, there is nothing you can really do that's going to prepare you for the kind of weather that we experienced over the course of that week. And it really came down to Don and his people maintaining those vehicles, getting on top of problems quickly, Bill and his crew getting out there and addressing problems with switches and rail and everything like that allowed us to accomplish the ability to keep the service running. And as we indicated, that was in a situation where a lot of other systems were unable to do that. So I during that entire event, spent a lot of time applauding the employees of CTA for their support, and I should point out for their attendance.
Yeah.
While we certainly had some absenteeism during this time, I think that we had a level of attendance from our employees that was beyond what many people may have expected under the circumstances. And I do want to give a shout out to the ATU leaders at both 308 and 241 for really helping support us and encouraging our employees to come into work and to basically be available for us to provide the services that we needed to provide.
So I've got a couple of questions, and Dorval sort of answered one. And I don't know if Bill or Don who should answer this, but in the case where on a rail system where we don't have service 24 hours a day, how do you sort of keep the snow? I think the orange line, the midway going out the mid, how do you sort of, I know we've got the switches that kind of keep the rail warm, but how do you also, kind of make sure the snow doesn't pile up on those rail lines where we don't provide, it's not 24 hours service?
So one of the things that we do have are sleep fighters, and that's all a part of our winter weather plan book that we put out each year that kind of, identifies vehicles that are going to be out on the system, laying pace, pushing snow, or whatever is needed to ensure that the right-of-ways stay clear. But one of the big things that we do overnight on the lines that close, that we continue to run some type of out-of-service equipment on those lines, and that keeps it kind of free and ready for when AM service starts. So on the green, the pink, and the brown and orange lines, we ran equipment overnight.
Okay. So I've got two more questions. One, in light of the crack that was found on Lakeshore Drive, I mean, to me, this winter's been like sort of whipsaw in terms of the weather. One day it's below zero, it's in the single digits, and the next day it's 20, 30 degrees. Have we done anything differently in terms of inspecting our equipment? Just thinking about the crack that was discovered, at Lakeshore Drive. So with this whipsaw kind of weather that we're having, are you doing anything different to look at some of our systems? Because as Dorval mentioned a little earlier, it's so old that kind of freezing, thawing out, the impact that could have.
Well, on the vehicle side, it definitely takes a toll, but we have a lot of, manpower in place to try to react to those situations. And also, we're still running our regular maintenance on equipment, inspections and things like that. But we have people in place to try to stay on top of it. It's once it unthaws, we'll find a lot of things that we didn't find that when was freezing. So we just continue to stay on top of it throughout the event.
And then finally, my last question, with the purchase of new bus and new rail cars, is there any technology or anything that's coming online that makes it less likely or helps in terms of overcoming these kind of challenges going forward?
One of the things that we're looking at, and we're going to go back to do some research, we had this discussion yesterday in Flash in reference to icing issues are probably some of our biggest challenges when it comes to the rail system. So one of the things that we're working to do is to see if there's any additional things that we can do with the equipment as far as adding, taking away. I know on the new rail cars, there's some things we're looking at as far as de-icer. Will the operators be able to kind of press a button and lay the pace instead of us having to man? Because right now, we put a person on the train to apply the de-icer to the rail. Is there something we can do with that? So there's some things that we're looking at to potentially do. And also Bill, he can talk more about some of the things that he's trying to do with the third rail itself to try to prevent some of that. But the ice is probably our biggest challenge. Snow we can kind of work through and not have as many challenges, but when it comes to the ice, it's probably the biggest. And on our bus side, we actually did pretty good when it came to buses. We didn't have a lot of issues as we did in the past with our older fleets. And one of the challenges that we did have with our older fleet of buses, which I didn't see this time around, which I was concerned about, was freezing of airlines. Because once the airline freezes, it locks up the brakes, and you're kind of stuck. And we were very concerned about that. But we put a plan in place to drain air tanks and all that inside the garages, so we had very little issues when it came to brakes. So we did pretty good when it came to buses.
So a couple things I would highlight to your question, Chairman, about our infrastructure is, though we do regular and rigorous inspections of all of our infrastructure to ensure it's safe capacity for our customers, we did put out special inspections tied to this winter weather. Our standards for both track and structure trigger at certain temperatures, us doing special watches of our rail lines as well as structures that have unique characteristics that could be prone to disruptions in these types of extreme weather events. We had inspectors checking them out throughout the course of the event as well as following it because, like you mentioned, there was a pretty big swing in temperature the other way. And we also, as we've started to thaw out, have started kind of putting some eyes on other areas that would be of concern to us, not necessarily in the first priority, but just double checking them on the backside to make sure that there weren't any movements that we wouldn't have expected at this point. So we've continued to kind of highlight that throughout. And on the question of technology, we've actually, throughout the event, we're leveraging some new technology we've been testing that allowed us to use our signal system to help us understand advanced failures of rail so that we could more quickly respond to them, get in front of those before they were of greater risk to us. So both on our red and our blue line, we actually had 24/7 monitoring of that technology and helping us dispatch our signal personnel and alert our control center and our rail operations about the potential defects that may be out there while we could get people to investigate firsthand. So.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions as well. I guess mine goes a little bit more, and either one of you may answer, but with regards to our manpower and how are we training them and kind of planning ahead for that, both from the safety issue, their safety, right, and then preparing them, because it does seem like this is not going to go away. We've seen so many changes in the last couple of years with regards to weather, and it seems like it's getting more severe. So that's my first question, and I have two more. So
Okay, as far as the safety piece, we had at least 2 conference calls a day just to talk about the weather, get an update on where we were with the weather, and also the safety department, Ron Esser's group, actually put out, kind of the bulletins that we currently have in place that talk about staying hydrated, drinking water, the necessary breaks throughout an event like we had 2 weeks ago. And so all that was also put on the monitors that are at all the locations across the system, that's kind of in the employee's face, reminding them to wear the proper shoes, the proper equipment, and also in the garage level where we had people that were at the shops who may be responding to an incident. The managers reminded employees, check the employees before they went out, make sure they had various things, right boots on, layers, and also we also had the supply chain they gave us thousands of hand warmers that employees used just to have on them if they needed them, especially our CSAs, our rail operators that are out that may have to get out of the train to do some troubleshooting or whatever. They had all that equipment with them to be able to stay warm. But it was all about keeping an eye on the employees and make sure that they were safe.
will there be ongoing training with that? I'm just thinking because for next year, so that we're prepared and even more so. Great job, though. I mean, kudos,
Yeah.
really, and thank you so much for for the work and for protecting our citizens and our employees, but I'm just curious about that.
Part of what we do after any sort of major event like this is do sort of an internal debrief of lessons learned and things that we can do to better prepare or to get through these events in the future. And so all of this does get incorporated into that conversation. There's a lot of discussion about the protective gear that our employees have to wear. Because particularly on the rail side, our employees are in close contact with the third rail, they can't just put on anything and go out into that weather to do that. And so there's approved gear that they have to have or they're allowed to use to basically protect them against the electricity as well as obviously doing that work. We're constantly looking at opportunities to upgrade or improve that gear. We had a lot of conversation this particular time about goggles and whether or not there's some set of goggles we should consider issuing to employees to deal with that extreme cold, because that's really the one part of your face you really can't protect. And so I know that I talked to Bill a lot about that, and we talked about, both what we currently have, because we actually do have some equipment that our employees use and whether we need to upgrade that. So the short answer to your question is yes, we are going to look at what else we need to do. We do have bulletins, as Don indicated, that we give to our employees to remind them of the proper attire and how to protect themselves against the cold. We get out information about signs of frostbite so that they know and can recognize, when they may be facing a situation where they need to get indoors or get protected. And we also, which Don didn't mention, but obviously a lot of our employees who work in our rail stations, stuff like that, have heaters and things of that nature that are intended to provide some level of warmth. During this event, we were obviously making the priority any calls that we got for malfunctioning heaters and things of that nature so we could get on them right away. Unfortunately, even the heaters that we have, as they were working in that kind of extreme cold, weren't being as warming as we would like for them to be. And so we were cognizant of those issues and certainly made it clear that employees should communicate to their managers if there were concerns or issues they had about their personal health and safety as related to the conditions that they were working in. As far as I know, we did not have any significant injuries or issues that occurred as a part of the cold weather with our employees, which I think is a testament to the fact that we put protocols into place and really did educate our employees about our expectations, and we'll continue to build on and improve upon that, as we go forward for future events.
No, that was,
Also, not to cut you off, but also one thing that I did not mention is that at the beginning before the winter sets in, we have a tabletop exercise, which involves every department inside of the agency, and we also involve outside agencies like the Streets and Sands and other departments within, the city of Chicago that's held right here at CTA, where we go to those various scenarios, where if there's an issue with the system, what are your reactions going to be? And it goes down to all the way down to senior manager and general manager levels, just to make sure that they understand how important it is for them to be on top of what they're doing, and also for us to evaluate to make sure that they understand what they need to do in order to protect the agency and protect the customers and protect the employees.
no, that's great. I mean, the layering and the working together is fantastic. And Brian, I just want to mention as well, I follow social media a lot, as you may or may not know, but great job on that. I do want to make a comment. It was interesting because I did see some of the comments regarding, us not just looking at the U.S., but even looking at what Russia does because of the severe cold, and, really taking a look at what they're doing with their transit system because they go through some of these same periods.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, but at the meeting that I had yesterday with my team, I made the same comment, which is we should not just look within the U.S. at what transit systems are doing to deal with this, particularly around the icing issue, which Don was talking about, which is a real challenge for us. I said we should look internationally, and we should look at some of the other cold weather cities that have transit systems and see if there are things that we can adopt from what they do that can be helpful here in Chicago. And so that actually is something I tasked my folks to follow up on and to see whether there are other best practices that we should be incorporating into what we do.
Great. Thank you again, though. Thank you.
I just want to say you guys did an excellent job for all the abbreviated services that Metro and other transit systems were doing. just to be on call for the regular schedule, plus going above and beyond. Just following social media, I have friends that actually take the CTA in. I don't even think the post office would deliver mail. So what's the saying, rain, sleet, or snow? I think that should be to the CTA as well. You guys did an excellent job, and I have friends that took the bus into work, and they were on time, and they got to work on time. I think some of them said, unfortunately, they did get to work early. CTA was really well that day, but you guys did an outstanding job, even through the media. At night, they were showing the buses at the being the warming centers at places that didn't have heat. That got around to the other states in the country, and that sticks out, especially with the polar vortex that doesn't come any 20, 25 years. But you guys were proactive, and I think Don, you mentioned, and Bill mentioned being offensive. That's your best weapon. So great job to you and your staff.
Thank you.
How was the pizza? No, just kidding.
Well, it was New York style pizza, so we had a little bit of an issue with that.
But Chairman,
Any other questions, I guess?
We're good.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I just want to,
Director
I think we also should thank Bill and Don, but also our president here, because it was informed that we shouldn't go out. But he was out informing the community that the bus was going to be on schedule.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely,
think kudos should
absolutely,
go to him, our president.
absolutely.
We'll go to Jared. I think we're adjourned. I think we're done. That was wonderful. Thank you. Glenn Dorval says my number's out there. I got 3 calls from contractors asking about those fires on the switches. And I told them all, it's Metro, it's not us. But you're absolutely right. 3 contractors called me within a day.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of family members asking the same question, so it certainly was some confusion around that. I think in some of the media reports, they even suggested it was CTA.
Exactly.
Because they didn't know what the other transit systems were. But I guarantee you, we do not set our tracks on fire.
That's what I told them. We're ready, Alex. You ready, Mark?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you need us?
I would like to call to order the February 13, 2019 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Will the secretary call the roll, please?
Yes, Reverend Miller. Mr. Ryan's not here. Ms. Alvarez-Rosales.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Youngblood.
Here.
Mr. Silva.
Here.
Mr. Patterson.
Here.
We have a quorum with 6 members present.
Our next order of business is the review of the finance report. Presenter Michelle Curran.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. I'm Michelle Curran, Vice President of Budget and Capital Finance, and I'll be reviewing the December financial results. For the month of December, fare and pass revenues are up $1.2 million compared to budget and continue to be strong with people shifting from pay-per-use to passes. The reduced fare reimbursement continues to be cut by the state, and non-fare box revenue exceeded budget by $100,000. Overall, revenue is $100,000 favorable to budget, and free rides are up $200,000 compared to December 2017. On a year-to-date basis, fare and pass revenues are up $5.7 million compared to budget, while reduced fare reimbursements are down $14.4 million, and non-fare box revenue is down $1.5 million. Non-fare box revenue is down due to the federal reduction in the Build America bond subsidy and timing of miscellaneous and non-capital grant revenues. Overall, revenue is down $10.2 million for the year, but it would have been positive $5 million if not for state and federal cuts. On the expense side, labor expense for the month is negative $800,000. Materials are positive by $300,000, and fuel is favorable to budget due to lower prices in December, while power is essentially flat to budget. Purchase of security services is also positive to budget, and other expenses continue to be favorable to budget at $2.4 million for December. Overall expenses are 2.4 million favorable for the month, providing for a total favorability to budget of 2.5 million for December. Year-to-date, labor expense is 24.4 million unfavorable to budget due to the union labor contract agreements after the budget was approved. Materials, 2 million favorable to budget. Fuel and power also positive to budget due to locking in favorable pricing. Purchase of security services is also positive to budget, and other expenses are very favorable due to working with departments to manage costs. Overall expenses are positive 16.3 million year-to-date for a net favorability of 6 million. The overall positive variance would have been 21 million if not for the federal and state cuts. On the commodity side, fuel is positive 400,000 for the month and 1.5 million for the year. We've locked in pricing for 85% of the expected consumption in 2019, providing budget certainty. We've also locked in 75% for 2020 and 25% for 2021 projected volume. Power is slightly negative for the month, but positive 200,000 for the year, and we've locked in 100% of pricing through 2022. Natural gas is slightly positive for the month and positive 200,000 for the year, and we've locked in 70% of the expected 2019 volume, and we're nearly complete with locking in 70% for 2020 through 2022. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, please?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted, again, and I know Jeremy isn't here, Michelle, but again, and this is a thank you to Dorval, to Jeremy, to the entire team. I mean, you know, there's an old saying that good news travels nowhere and bad news travels everywhere. Again, as you mentioned, if not for the federal and state cuts, we would have been in a year in a surplus. The fact of the matter is that we lost about $10 million because of those federal and state cuts. You guys were able to make it up over a year's period, and that goes to a lot of the folks sitting in this room. And again, a lot of kudos to the team and Dorval's leadership that the agency was able to do it. I think every month I kept asking the question, can you assure me that we're going to balance our budget? And if you think about going through FY19, it was our first increase with fares. So if you take, we were able to increase fares, you were able to balance the budget despite federal and state cuts. I mean, clearly you guys did a yeoman's job. All of the managers here under Dorval's leadership. So again, kudos, and please pass that on to Jeremy. But again, I am just, not only did you give your word, you kept it. I mean, a $10 million deficit, you were able to make it up on the expense side. And then again, the federal cuts, which we didn't inspect. And hopefully, you know, Springfield, we will still have to endure cuts for the first 6 months of this year because their budget doesn't get done for FY20, I don't believe, until June, the end of June. So hopefully we'll see revenue coming back from the state at the end. And I still know that we've got to endure the federal cuts, but again, just kudos to the finance team and all of the managers in the room who helped make balancing the FY19 budget possible.
Thank you, and we appreciate the departments working with us to do the same.
Can you speak on how the January numbers are trending right now? I know because we just got to talk about the weather.
Sure.
Polar Board.
So January started out the month strong, but the weather turned against us in the middle of the month. We had several consecutive days of snow and very cold temperatures. But we do budget based on multi-year trends. So this will help smooth out the increased costs and decrease revenues. But, you know, as President Carter mentioned, we faced historic cold temperatures. And, you know, it was like 2 weeks of snow almost every day. But as always, we'll continue to look to reduce costs in the coming months to offset some of the impact of the severe weather we were just facing.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Board of Education of the City of Chicago for the sale and use of ventra cards and tickets for Chicago public schools. Mike.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Michael Gwynn, Director of Revenue and Fare Systems.
Presented for your consideration is an intergovernmental agreement with the Chicago Board of Education for the sale and use of venture cards and tickets. In 2013, CTA and CPS entered into a first IGA related to ventra, and this agreement essentially renews that prior agreement with some changes to reflect the lessons learned over the last 5 years. The IGA will allow CPS to purchase CPS student ventra cards for their students and ventra tickets for their various transportation programs, and continues CTA's and CPS's partnership in administering the student ventra program. The changes to this IGA include providing for the creation of a new reloadable ventra card for grant-funded CPS programs, which will allow them to avoid unnecessary ticket costs and improve monitoring and reporting, and provides additional, as well as the changes will provide CTA additional protections against fraud, including audit rights to review records, a clear definition of student eligibility, and it establishes liability for CPS to compensate CTA for inappropriate card issuance. The term of this IGA is 5 years, and it authorizes CPS to spend up to $37.5 million on venture products. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
How do we control the tickets, okay, that go to the school?
Sure. CPS does everything centrally, first of all, so that there's a single conduit for all of the purchases. So it's not individual schools making all of the purchases, but one program has general responsibility for it. CPS then has various controls about who is authorized to order, who's authorized to give them out. We provide them reports so that they can track usage. And then when new orders come in asking for additional tickets, we're able to give kind of a quick look to see if it makes sense that they would be ordering that number of cards or tickets again at that time.
Do we do any audit?
We do some general auditing, typically in partnership with CPS. They're very interested to make sure that all of their spend is actually going to students who deserve it, just like we want to make sure that people who would otherwise be paying full fare aren't taking advantage of the lower reduced fare. With this, we're going to be able to actually go in and look at attendance numbers and have a little bit better view into some of the entitlements, especially over summer, to make sure that only the appropriate people are getting it. They're also looking at better enhancements to track the tickets to an actual student record, so that you can see if there are students who are always coming in, asking for tickets, but maybe not showing up to school. So we want to support them in their efforts to make sure that their spend is being appropriately managed.
Okay. Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Cardtronics.
Chairman Silva, I think you might skip the page there. The next one on the agenda is the Shamrock Shuffle.
And did we do the approval of the minutes?
No,
Yeah, you're right, you're
We'll come
right.
back and get them at the end,
Yeah,
Chairman.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, no problem. So we'll do the Shamrock Shuffle. You can read that one.
Yeah, our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional advertising trade agreement with Bank of America for the 2019 Bank of America Shamrock Shuffle. Mike.
Thank you. Presented for your consideration is our annual co-promotional agreement with Bank of America for the Shamrock Shuffle. This year it will be held on Sunday, March 24th. This is the 15th year that CTA has partnered with the organizers of the Shamrock Shuffle to help promote the event. CTA is providing $26,491 in unsold advertising on buses and trains in exchange for $26,491 in promotional value from the Shuffle. This value to CTA will include sponsorship recognition in the participant guides, on the web pages and emails, etc., and at banners at the start and finish of the course. This promotion will not only encourage current CTA riders to use CTA for non-work-related trips, but it also has the potential to encourage tourists and other new customers to use CTA to follow runners along the race and to access other Shamrock Shuffle events. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? there is no further question, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Cartronics USA to install, operate, and maintain automated teller machines at designated rail stations and employee locations. Mike?
Thank you. Presented is an ordinance to enter into an agreement with Cardtronics for the installation and operation of ATMs at 88 CTA locations. CTA manages its ATM offerings in two packages. One set is operated by PNC Bank, and Cardtronics currently manages this set under the TCF brand, so they're the incumbent. The term of the agreement is 5 years with 2 one-year options. The estimated value of the agreement is approximately $942,000 for the base period and $1.267 million for the full 7-year period. CTA receives a base rent per machine and then a share of the transaction fees. The duration of this contract will align the end date for both packages so we can have greater flexibility in how we manage the program at the end and about how we make the offerings. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
How many parties were involved in the bidding?
So we had 2 respondents to it, PAI and Cardtronics. PAI, we entered into negotiations, but were unable to get a deal with them, so we went with Cardtronics. The ATM industry is a troubled industry, I guess you could say, that as more people are going to online banking, fewer people are carrying around cash. The number of potential vendors are dwindling. And a lot of banks will typically just, go out they don't operate their own ATMs. They go out and have one of these providers like Cardtronics or PAI to do it. So it's a challenging landscape generally, and we just had the 2 respondents.
But the process that we use is pretty much the same that we've been using?
Absolutely. We did this with JLL through the brokerage, so they were able to send it out far and wide. And then able to, so we sent it out to over 150 community and trade groups to let them know that the contract is available. But unfortunately, we just got the 2 responses.
Thank you. Any other questions? If there's no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Our next order of business is the review of 3 ordinances. An ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Mobile Cubes LLC to install, operate, and maintain mobile charging vending machines at designed rail stations. An ordinance authorizing a license agreement with DMP ImagineCom America Corporation to install, operate, and maintain photo booth vending machines at designated rail station. An ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Romaine Empire Inc., DBA Farmers Fridge to install, operate, and maintain refrigerated food vending machines at designated rail station. Mike?
Thank you. So as a part of CTA's ongoing efforts to enhance our customer experience, staff working with JLL has pursued specialty vending options to place in our facilities. We have 3 contracts in front of you under this initiative that are presented for approval. As mentioned, the first contract is with Mobile Cubes for cell phone battery pack rental kiosks. So at these locations, customers can rent recharge packs for their phones for $4.99 for the first 24 hours and then 99 cents for each day after that. Then they can return them to any Mobile Cube kiosk. They don't have to go back to where they checked it out. They have kiosks located in airports, convention centers, hotels throughout the country, and locally they're at Union Station, McCormick Place, Sears Tower, or Willis Tower, and various hotels. So at CTA, Mobile Cubes will be first installed at 26 pilot locations along the Red Line and in the Loop. And we are in the process of reviewing potential West Side locations to include in this initial phase as well. Many of the pilot locations are also areas where we offer free Wi-Fi, which is a great combination to underscore the value and the convenience of both initiatives. The contract provides for further expansion of the locations into other areas if the pilot is successful. And we estimate that we'll receive about $15,000 in revenue annually from this contract. The second contract is for a photo booth at the Chicago Red Line station. This machine is similar to many of the machines that you'll see at museums and other tourist destinations. Customers can get passport photos for $15 or just goofy pictures with their friends for $5 to commemorate a night out or their comfortable ride home on the CTA. This has the screen on the, you can get different backgrounds, so we'll be working with the vendor for a CTA-themed screen to really underscore where it is. And then our estimated revenue for this is $3,650. And then finally, the third contract is with Farmer's Fridge, a healthy food vending machine. So staff has identified 4 pilot locations, Grand and Fullerton on the red line, Indiana on the green line, and Damon on the pink line. Farmer's Fridge offers various healthy and delicious, locally produced food offerings ranging from $2.50 for a snack up to $8 for a larger meal. And they're a great alternative to the typical vending machine fare that you see out there. So we're particularly interested in the Indiana location because it's an area that otherwise is underserved for healthy options in a lot of situations. And then we're also looking at options to put the machines in some of our employee locations to provide healthy alternatives for our employees at garages and other locations. We have to work with another vendor for that, but there's interest on all sides to extend this offering to our employees. And we estimate $3,400 in annual revenue from the Farmer's Fridge contract. So these contracts are all part, as I mentioned, of CTA's efforts to provide better services to our customers, to activate previously dormant space, and to make our stations more lively and busy. The RFP that we leveraged to bring these contracts before you remains open. So if any other vendors see the news about this or go through the stations and see it, we have an easy way for them to propose new programs and offerings to CTA, which we'll bring back in front of you. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
How do we check, the wholesomeness of the product, so that they come and check,
So they are responsible for making sure that all of the upkeep, the maintenance of the machines, and that would include checking the stock. We'll be looking at them very closely as we go in to make sure that nothing is expired or nothing shouldn't be there anymore. Likewise with some of the photo booth, for example, we'll be making sure that they're adhering to that. The maintenance requirements to make sure that they continue to be attractive offerings and options for our customers.
Any questions? Go
Yeah,
ahead,
a
please.
question and a statement, and this might be for Brian. Just trying to figure out how we're going to push it out to our customers that we've added these amenities. As you said, they're not big revenue generators. They're to enhance the customer experience, and I think it's going to be great, but how do we sort of push it out to our customers, and pushing it out maybe, Brian, in a way that it has, more of a shelf life, so that the board approves it today, we push it out tomorrow. Sometimes you've got to do it over and over again before it kind of sticks to, guess what, when you go to these stations now, you've got these amenities, these enhanced amenities that are available to you.
Correct. As you mentioned, we will be issuing a press release, assuming the board approves the contract. We'll issue a press release, do our follow-up social media promotion. We'll then do some follow-up with some targeted media. I think some of the feature publications, Chicago Parent, Time Out Chicago, other places might like to do it, We'll also look into some type of more permanent signage or information, certainly a presence on our website. President Carter, since 2015, has talked about enhancing the customer experience, and we've done so in a number of ways, via technology, via these types of amenities, and it's something that we continually try to promote, so we'll look for other ways to find a more permanent avenue for that. We mention it all the time, we put it in our electronic properties, but we'll see if we can find some type of promotional or physical way to announce
And
the
I thought
amenities.
about social media because I know we've talked about the millennials, how to get the next generation of transit riders. And when you look at all three amenities that you're talking about, whether it's the photo booth, healthy eating, the mobile all of those are things that I think, a younger generation that's where I'm like, social media, which they pay attention to, and I don't know, again, how to kind of really push it through that if you're riding transit, oh, by the way, guess what? These amenities are now available. And then the other comment I wanted to make, I think the fresh food vendor is a DBE that's housed out of 1871. I think I read that in the write-up. Is that the case?
They're in the West Loop
They're in the West
Industrial
Loop?
Incubator,
Okay,
yeah.
they're
But
in the
it's a
West
local
Loop.
company, as you mentioned, so it's a great
Great.
nexus
I thought
there.
that was just really a great find for us, something that might have started at 1871 and moved to the West Loop,
Yeah.
but it's a DBE, and I thought that was just a great find to give them an opportunity at some of our stations to do this.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's a DBE, but it is a local company that, as you indicated, started as an incubator and is now on the west side of the loop. And certainly an opportunity for us to promote local service. I also believe it's local sourced food. But to your point, I definitely want to figure out a way to brand and promote what we're doing. I also think that we have opportunities to work directly with the vendors themselves, who obviously have an interest in wanting to promote these amenities as well, and make sure that we're sort of coordinating where we can on that information. And I think that it'll be the beginning of a number of things I think we want to work on, where we'll be promoting and branding the convenience factor of using CTA as it ties into other things that you may want to do conveniently at our locations.
I thought, Chairman, if I may, I thought they were great. I think we should be doing more of it. It keeps us very current. And even though it may not be a lot of money, on the onset of it, I know one of the things, for example, at the airport, they installed something similar, and it's kind of a vending area for fresh foods, and it's one of the fastest growing areas for them. It's increased so much, and that particular vendor is in a lot of other airports now. It's growing so fast. So, and I'm a big foodie and, believe in healthy eating as well. So I just think it's a really good move on our part. I did want to ask, were you going to say something, President?
No, I was going to agree with you. That's also one of the reasons why we're looking at trying to put it for our employees into
Yes.
our facilities, because it is a healthy option, and we want to promote that as well for a number of obvious reasons. But we will find a way to certainly leverage this in a positive way to really hopefully generate the other benefits that come to CTA for people who want to get access to that type of
No, I think it's really good.
vending machine.
It does enhance, and I think that opens up a lot of opportunities. So with that said, I know you mentioned it's an open RFP. So if there are vendors that are out there that are interested in bringing ideas, or how does that opportunity work? Like, where do they go?
They can go to our website or contact JLL about opportunities and get the process from there. We are happy and thrilled if anybody's hearing this and want to pitch other ideas.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place these 3 items on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing a first amendment to a sublease to DJM Logistics LLC of a portion of property located at 120 North Rosine Avenue. Bill?
Good morning, William Mooney, Chief Infrastructure Officer. Real estate staff is recommending approval of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to a sublease with DGAM Logistics LLC for a portion of the property located at 120 North Racine. In August 2015, the Transit Board approved a 10-year lease with Sterling Racine LLC for approximately 85,000 square feet on the first and second floors of 120 North Racine. Sterling Racine LLC has an approved sublease under ordinance number 18-70 for approximately 7,786 square feet to DJM Logistics LLC. The lessee is seeking consent to amend the sublease to increase the leased area by an additional 6,633 square feet. The terms of the sublease remain unchanged. Under the terms of the agreement with Sterling Racine, all subleases require authorization and approval of the Chicago Transit Board, which cannot reasonably be withheld. Sterling Racine LLC will continue to be responsible for all rent and expenses set forth in the lease agreement. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance consenting to the assignment of a lease for property located at 4645 Northwestern Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. Bill.
Staff is recommending approval of an ordinance authorizing the Chicago Transit Authority's consent to the assignment of a lease for the property located at 4645 Northwestern Avenue. Chicago Transit Authority leases retail concession space at the CTA's Western Brown Line station to Merchant Donuts, who operates a Dunkin' Donuts facility on the premises. Merchant Donuts is requesting assignment of the lease to Diamond Bakery, Inc., who will continue to operate the space as a Dunkin' Donuts. The assignment will not affect the original terms of the agreement. Merchant Donuts will continue to be responsible for all rent and expenses set forth in the lease agreement if Diamond Donuts is unable to fulfill their commitments. Pursuant to the terms of the lease, CTA must consent prior to any assignment of the lease. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
Second.
Thank you. Our next order of business is a review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Assessor's Office of the County of Cook, Illinois, to access Geographic Information System data. Mike.
I'm Mike Connolly, your Chief Planning Officer. The ordinance before you this morning would authorize a one-year renewal of an intergovernmental agreement with the Assessor's Office of Cook County. This IGA will allow CTA staff continued access to GIS data from the Assessor's Office to ensure that our planning and analysis are based on complete and accurate information. Accessing this GIS data will facilitate the authority's decision-making process with respect to managing and maintaining our properties and rights-of-way, as well as our service planning. This IGA authorizes our access to this information for free. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have on this item.
Say, Mike, I've got a question. Does the information change yearly? I'm just curious as to why this is a one-year agreement versus.
It does change on an annual basis, and so
Okay.
there is an annual update to it. We would like to try to achieve a 5-year agreement with the assessor's office, and we've asked for that before, but right now we're still limited to one-year renewals.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
Second.
Thank you. Our final order of business today is the review of 9 purchase and sales award recommendations. Presenter, Elaine McCormick.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's start with A1 through A4. Any questions? In the leasing of the automobiles, we have been doing business with this company.
We have
For
since
how long?
2008
to
with Enterprise, yes.
Any other questions?
We received bids from how many on that one?
From two
From two.
companies. Because we do lease such a large number, it's limited, the number of companies that can accommodate our needs.
There's a minority participation in there?
There is.
Yes, there's a DBE commitment of 5%.
DBE,
with-
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes,
Of 5%?
correct.
Let's,
that a limited arena for DBEs, I would assume? Just 'cause-
The subcontracting opportunities are limited to repairs on the vehicles. So, based on the previous history, that's what we assessed the DBE goal at.
Let's go to contract number B1 and B2. Any questions? Let's move to contract number E1.
Mr. Chairman?
Questions?
Just real quick with regards to B2, that actually is a very good DBE story for us. This is a company that used to be a sub to the prime and has grown to the point where they're able to compete and actually won the contract over the prime that used to be a sub for. So it is an example of a DBE actually growing into the point where they can actually take over the contract themselves. So we're very proud to have gotten a DBE to award that contract to.
How did that process go? How long did that process take where they got to up and running to actually take over the whole?
Yeah, Juan Pablo may be able to speak to sort of how long they've been doing this work as a sub to Delgado, D'Angelo Brothers.
They were the subcontractor on the previous iteration of the contract. I can find out how long they've been in business for you and get back to you.
Yeah, I think that's a great story to tell because that's how we're promoting the smaller companies to make sure they have a bigger bite of the apple when it comes to larger projects. And if we can tell that story to other companies that are actually being mentored by bigger companies, that'll be fantastic.
Definitely, and we always encourage our DBEs to bid as prime when they feel they can meet the capacity and capability of the contract.
Yeah, great.
Let's go to contract F1, please. Can you give us a little bit of explain us, okay?
So happy to. Tom McCone, Chief Administrative Officer. So this is a contract with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is really the premier public transit research institution really in the world. And what this contract does is it allows us to tap into that knowledge, that sort of leading edge knowledge, and apply that directly into projects at the CTA.
And we've been successful with working with them.
Yeah, we've had a number of projects, both across planning, finance, operational, and then strategic projects that we've had with them to help both improve efficiency and sort of increase our modeling capabilities, increase our internal capacity, and we've even actually been able to hire some students off of this and bring them in as employees who are currently working at the CTA.
I think to put a finer point on it, one of the things that MIT worked on for us was the fare model that we use to basically predict sort of how various fare scenarios will play out over the course of time. Terry, you were mentioning earlier about our budget for this year and the fact that in spite of fare increase and some of the other challenges, we still came out with an overall positive budget. Part of that was due to the work that they had done on this model that allowed us to determine how we should actually structure our fare increase in a way that would still continue to generate revenue at a level that we needed to budgetarily while dealing with the potential ridership loss that would come from any sort of increase in our fares at all. And so I think that's just one example of something that they worked on that actually resulted in millions of dollars of revenue coming to CTA as a result of their work and their support of the tools that we need to make decisions here at CTA.
They're supervised by the professors, right?
Yeah, so this is a contract not only just to work with the students, but also the faculty as well. So we get the benefit of working with both the students and the faculty on these projects.
Could you also mention a word about the opportunity to grant local, especially with UIC?
Yeah, definitely. So this is not the only university partnership that we have, and we work with other local universities, both on the research side, so on the project side, but also on the professional development side. And as you're probably aware, on the professional development side, we're actively continuing to work with the city colleges and also with DePaul University. And then on the research side, we look proactively to work with them on various projects, and we've worked with others like UIC, like Northwestern, and we're talking with a number of institutions about projects where we can partner with them to work locally with them as well.
I mean, I think philosophically what I'm trying to do with all of these programs is find a way to bring outside the box thinking, new and innovative ideas to CTA, while also tapping into younger talent that can be potential, opportunities for us to recruit for employees to come here in the future. And so from my perspective, all of these opportunities and these partnerships we develop with universities and colleges is another way of us really strategically trying to address the reality of what's happening with transportation right now and the impact that that's having on how we've operated in the past versus how we're going to have to operate in the future. And so a lot of the things that they're doing, in terms of work, and MIT is one example of that, is really helping us look at these things differently while also bringing in, we talked earlier about sort of the international scope of what's going on. And one of the benefits of MIT is that they have an international scope of work that they do already, and so they're working with London and other transit systems around the world, and they bring those ideas to us so that we can basically look at them and see how we can use them here in the operations that we do. So it's one of a multi-layered approach of what we're trying to do here that actually help me innovate, and then ultimately they come back to you as a board member and ideas that we do in terms of service or fares or other things that we're working on. That's sort of the background of all of that work is the work that these folks are doing.
I think it's really great that we're doing that. I'm wondering, and I've seen, some of the results and everything, and some of the ideas that are coming out. I think it's fantastic, both MIT and as well as some of the other universities. I'm curious, are we looking at, and I know you mentioned one project, but are we looking at a connection between the projects and research that comes out and the ROI? And some of it may not be realized right away, obviously. Are we keeping a track of that?
Yeah, we have that sort of on a project-by-project basis, and I think President Carter mentioned one where it was obvious, right? I mean, we had the fare model prediction was within 1% of where we actually ended up this year, so incredibly valuable to have that sort of information. And those sorts of operational efficiency projects we're tracking to sort of what is the benefit we're seeing, and quite frankly, what would it cost if we were to get this sort of information going through other methods as well, right? So what are we saving by using students working with our staff to develop these? The other thing we have is these long-term strategic projects, right? Where, again, like President Carter said, you're thinking outside the box. So you're looking at potentially high impact, but it's over a longer period of time. And so those are ones that they take a while to develop, but you want to make sure that you're tracking them and staying close to them so that you can realize that value as it comes forward.
In essence, it's a CTA legacy, right? You end up creating and then leaving behind.
Yeah, and it's also a way for me to leverage our legacy because obviously an institution like CTA has a lot of cachet with these universities and colleges to be able to show that they worked with us to develop these types of programs and projects. And so, it's leveraging the fact that we're the second largest transit system in the country, but then using that as a basis to bring in talent that might not otherwise be engaged with CTA, but for these types of programs.
And are having a long-term impact on the industry, not just even us, on the industry itself, right?
Exactly. They're able to take ideas from around the globe that they've been working on and then apply them directly here. And then we can take advantage of that. They get the benefit of working with us and getting that sort of experience and also putting CTA out there as a leader in the industry as well.
Right.
Are some of those ideas proprietary?
So a lot of what they'll do will result in a thesis, right? So the uniqueness of this program is it's research that goes and it creates a thesis for the students, either a master's or a PhD thesis, and those get published. So a lot of this research will get published. If we do have proprietary information, obviously we sort of keep that internal, and then they publish more general information as part of their thesis.
So Tom, I had a recommendation because I was just looking through your write-up in terms of projects. So instead of waiting to the end of 3 years when the contract is up and sort of, having us kind of walk through it, I would say going forward, every time there's a project that's associated with something that one of our partners have worked on, I think it's a great time to highlight it throughout the year. That way, when we get to the end of a 3-year, we've all got some type of knowledge of, oh, by the way, 2 years ago they did this. So that was one of my recommendations is as they continue to work on projects, any of our partners, whether it's professional development or in this case, research or best practices in the U.S. or internationally, highlighting them in the write-up that, oh, by the way, this was one of our partners. It
I think
just
it's
keeps it fresh.
I think that's a terrific idea, and we'll definitely do that. I think, one of the realities is that you don't necessarily see at your level what the genesis of the work that they're doing, but you certainly see the end results of it, whether we're talking about fare increases or service adjustments and things of that nature. And we can certainly tie in their work, not just MIT, but the other schools we do as well as a backup to sort of the genesis of what it is that we're presenting to you.
Let's move to contract G1. Any questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place these 9 contracts on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
I'll second.
Since there is no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
So moved. I'll second.
May I have a second?
Yes, I'll take the roll, but after I take the roll, don't go to the adjournment yet. I believe that we skipped over the minutes, so let's come back after we take this vote. Then let's take a motion for the minutes and then the motion to adjourn. All right, Chairman Silva? But right now, I'm going to take the roll call for the motion to recommend approval of the omnibus. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Alias.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Reverend Patterson. Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes. And now we need a motion to approve the January minutes.
So moved.
And seconded by Mr. Youngblood. Reverend Miller. Ms. Alvarez-Alias.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Reverend Patterson. Chairman Silva.
Yes.
The motion to approve the January minutes passes with 6 yes votes.
And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. 2 minutes. because we're about to start, and if everybody would please silence their cell phones, please. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for February 13. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes, sir. Reverend Miller. Ms. Alvarez.
Here.
Director Irvine will not be here today. Reverend Patterson. Mr. Silva. Mr. Youngblood.
Here.
Chairman Peterson.
Present.
We have a quorum with 6 members of the board present.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Before I move to public comment, I'd just like to acknowledge Melissa Fuller, who's here. She is the vice chair of our ADA committee, so want to thank her for being in attendance. Melissa, raise your hand. Where's she at? Okay, that's why I couldn't see you wide. Okay, thank you for being here. No, you can't sneak in. All right, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. The next agenda item is public comment. Greg?
Yes, sir. We have 2 public comment speakers if they would like to step up to the table. They are Ms. April Lawson and Ms. Ariella Maffei. And since Ms. Lawson had contacted me first, we will start with Ms. Lawson. Thank you very much. You can just direct the board.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so I routinely try to, the beginning of the year, go through everything that I've done last year and kind of take a note of things. And it occurred to me, wow, January 26th of last year, I sent you all a letter. I sent CTA a letter regarding 79th Street. And I'm a routine rider there. I live in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood. I get on at 79th Street. I come downtown to go to work. And what's been happening for the past year is there are people who solicit marijuana, socks, cigarettes, candy, and all kinds of things, but the main thing is the solicitation of the marijuana. And you have to kind of usher your way through to get on the train early in the morning. It's usually the same usual suspects. And not only that, but you see people who do things like jump over the turnstiles it's the Wild West.
Okay.
On 79th Street.
What
Anything
time in
goes.
the morning? What time?
Usually rush hour time.
Rush
so
hour
around
time.
8 o'clock, I would say from 8 o'clock. I mean, it's the craziest thing to be on a train at 8 o'clock in the morning, and before you get downtown, you're hearing your clothes smells like weed.
Okay.
Because somebody's on the train smoking a spliff.
Okay, all right.
And what I'm saying is there's a culture that exists there of lawlessness where these young men who do this, it's the usual suspects, and they have no regard.
Okay.
Now, what happened recently for me is there was a woman that was on the train, and these 2 guys took out a cigarette and just started to smoke. She informed them politely, this was an older woman in her 60s who informed them politely, hey, my lungs can't take this. Can you please refrain from that? Okay. And they started to yell profanity-laced things at her. So she got up and she pushed the button, you know, that silver button, the emergency button, and the protocol that the conductor needed to follow, he tried to follow, which is, hey, he got on the intercom and he mentioned that you're not supposed to be smoking on the train. If you continue to do so, he's going to stop and have the police take you off. In the meantime, these young men were aggressive with her. One of them took off his coat, put it down on the center of the floor, and got in her face. I'm sitting there, everybody else is on the bus, on the train, on edge, and now we're not on 79th, we're on 69th, and every time we're stopping, it's just escalating, and it was just really it was just really disconcerting.
Okay.
So I just remember finally getting off at 12th Street because I was like, well, I'm not going to stay on here, and there's 2 guys, and I don't know what's happening, and there's no men helping, and there's no women doing anything, and it just got completely out of hand, and I was in tears. And I ended up getting on the train and coming over here and signing up to actually speak to you about it. And I want you to understand that it's not an isolated incident. This is like a string of things that happen on a daily basis that once they continue to pile up on you, it's stressful.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to find out, you guys, I know that you have all kinds of rules and things in place, but I'm wondering, do you have a committee or a department that is over public safety?
Yes.
And do they measure what is happening? And are you aware? How are you going to enforce these rules?
Well, let me first of all thank you for coming down today and bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make it be like a big gripe fest or anything.
Well, no. Look, we appreciate you first of all being a rider. Second of all, I don't want you to wait another year. Greg will give you his number after you meet with whoever Dorval. We will put an end to this. I mean, 79th Street, we do have a security department. We do have transit police. If this is ongoing with the same cast of characters, we can start paying attention to this tomorrow. And we've got folks in the room who are in security, and they're hearing it from me that I want someone tomorrow to be out there addressing this, because this makes no sense.
Is this the first time you've heard of
This is the first time. This is the first time.
Seriously?
Look, you said you live in Auburn Gresham. I lived for 20 years at 81st and Wentworth. My family stays in Auburn Gresham at 81st and Normal. So I know that community. I represented that area for 4 years as alderman of the 17th Ward. This is the first time I've gotten this complaint about that station with this type of disregard for lawlessness at 79th Street. And so it's unacceptable anywhere along our rail system, but you shouldn't have to endure this day after day with the same cast of characters doing it and showing a totally disregard for how they should conduct themselves if they're riding on our system. So, Dorval, who should...
Yeah, I'm going to have you speak to our Chief of Safety and Security, Mr. Ron Esther. He's right here in the back. He oversees our K-9 and security units. He also works with Chicago Police Department that provide the transit police for us. And he will work with you to get the information about what you've observed and then work to basically keep you in the loop on how we're addressing that.
Yeah, and make sure you give her a number. So if this, again, you're here today, if this continues, you see in March, April, May, because what will happen when we put in place a presence, I am sure for a minute they will probably try to move or go somewhere.
Oh, yeah, they're very
for a
adept
minute,
at that.
But
Yeah.
they will probably eventually try to come back, which is why I want you to have this number. So if you see them coming back, you might say, wow, this is great. I've experienced a month or two of, feeling like, okay, I can ride in peace. But eventually, sometimes people come back and start to create that same kind of environment, which is unacceptable. You shouldn't have to wait for another year. I don't want to see you here in January. If it is to say, guess what? Things have gotten so much better. Thank you. But I want to make sure she gets her contact information. So whenever this flares up, we can get on top of it, because I'm sure the moment you put a presence out there, it's going to go away, but eventually they will come back. And I just want them to know that we're going to continue to have a presence there regardless of when they come back. So thank you again.
Well, I thank you very much, and I really, really appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Let me say that. And I also want to say that I would like to also be as proactive as
Yes.
possible
Yes.
because I think that problem solving is two-way.
Yep.
So again, I want to be here just as a person who's kind of an advocate,
Yep.
telling you, making you aware of
And we appreciate
things that are happening,
That is
just so
so
that you
important.
know.
Yep.
And then again, I just have a question with
Yes.
regards to I'm just curious as to how do you measure your success with public safety? And then you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you probably have some sort of model of public safety. How do you measure and scale whether it is being successful, and how does that stack up, say, to other transit systems?
Well, there is a customer service survey that I don't know if we do it
We
annually.
do. We both measure ourselves against other transit agencies and systems, and we also obviously have our own metrics that we set up. We work very closely with Chicago Police Department, which has a large set of measurements that they use in terms of public safety, because the Chicago Police Department actually provides the police security for us.
Yes, I've noticed that. You've got the police.
There's a mass transit
there's a
detail
department
that
on
actually
95th
right.
Street.
Yes, at
there.
95th Street they have an
Yeah.
office. So we work closely with them. There are performance metrics that they generate that tell us sort of what's happening on the system. I know, particularly at that station, there have been a number of arrests that have been made over the past year trying to deal with some of these problems. But as you pointed out, you show up and they disperse, and then as soon as the police leave, they come right back. I think what we want to talk to you about, and what I want to have Mr. Esther talk to you about, is sort of what new and different strategies you might put in place to specifically deal with those kind of problems, particularly in that area, that may require not only a larger presence, but maybe leveraging some of the other things that we have there in terms of security cameras and other things that are also patched into the police department in other ways that we can find to basically support what you want to see done. So I'm going to have you talk to Mr. Esther, and he can give you more detail. He can also share with you sort of what the statistics and the data is that we utilize for this, and work with you to sort of see how we can address this problem for you.
Okay, and then there's just one more thing.
Yes.
Okay, so I noticed that you all do a really good job of having pamphlets on all of the rules. Every rule that CTA has, you write it down, and it's displayed someplace where you can find out what those rules are. But unfortunately, what I'm trying to understand is, how do you enforce all of the no eating, the no soliciting? How do you enforce all of that?
Both our employees, like you indicated before, an operator will basically make an announcement saying, there's no smoking allowed on CTA, things of that nature, through printed material that we put up that basically has the rules of conduct explaining
Right.
what we're doing.
Which I read.
And then obviously with the security and police officers themselves, who ultimately have the ability to ticket somebody if in fact they are violating of our code of conduct. There are actually fines that are attached
I
to
know.
that. And so if the police issue a ticket to an individual for doing this, they are obviously subject to paying a penalty for engaging in a violation of those rules. Obviously, that by itself is not enough to stop people from
Sure.
doing what you're complaining about, and that's one of the reasons why we tend to try to employ a lot of different strategies in different places to deal with that. Some of it involves our contracted security services, the canine dogs that you'll see out there. Some of it involves the mass transit unit. Some of it involves undercover operations that the police engage in to basically catch and identify people who are in violation of either city requirements or CTA requirements. So there's a number of different things that are utilized, all of which are intending to try to address the concerns that you're raising.
Okay, well, I'm also going to share with you that I've been on other transit systems in different cities. And when I was in Los Angeles, for instance, there was, what they do is they have the attendant, I think you call them. The attendant is actually on the platform. He doesn't sit in one of those enclosed areas. He's on the platform, and he surveys the entire platform. And what they do, which I feel is really good, they do a very good job of this, is anything that you are doing. I had I think some candy or something. And the guy was like, "Excuse me, miss, there's no eating on the platform. If I see that out again, I'm going to have to ask you to," you know what I mean? They're serious about enforcing all of those things to the point where everybody has a clean, neat environment on the train, and you know that you expect that at every single stop. So I'm just sharing that with you. That's one of the things that I noticed there, and it results in a safer environment, and it also results in a cleaner environment.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to actually enforce all those little things. And if people are going to start getting fined for not doing those things, maybe if there was a consistent push on enforcing all of that. And that was just my suggestion. But I do appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, and we'll have Mr. Esther talk to you. I'm also going to have Don Bonds, who is our Chief Transit Officer, that oversees our customer assistance, because that is part of what our our employees are supposed to do as well. They're not just they're not supposed to be always just sitting in the booth. They're supposed to be out. They're supposed to be walking the
They're sitting in
platform
there
and stuff
just
like that.
half of them are
So
sitting
I want-
in there just like gossiping.
Right.
Where
So I
you
want-
come and you're like, excuse me, hello.
So that's why I want you to also have a conversation with Mr. Bonds, because he can also address that issue. If that's a problem, we can follow up on that as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Loss. If you want to stay now, you want to stay through this next talk, or would you like to go out there right now?
May I just sit right there?
You go right back and sit, Ms. Lawson, if you like.
Okay, thank
Go
you.
right ahead, sure, no problem. Thank you very much, ma'am. And now, Ms. Maffei?
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And thank you to Chairman Peterson and to the board for allowing me to speak today. Like Greg said, my name is Ariel Maffei, and I'm a resident of Chicago and a daily user of public transportation. First, I just want to commend all of you for the incredible work you're doing, especially maintaining service during this recent extreme winter weather we've been having. So thank you for that. I'm here today to bring to your attention an issue that I'm sure affects many other residents in the city that frequently use the CTA, and that's your policy on lost or stolen ventra cards. As your current policy stands, or at least the way I've been explained, only a cash balance is transferred in the event of a lost or stolen card. However, an unlimited pass is not. And I'm asking that you amend this policy. I recently purchased a $105 monthly pass, but I lost my wallet a bit over a week later. I knew my ventra card was registered, so I didn't fret about it as I was going through the process of getting a new driver's license, debit card, credit cards, all of that. However, to my surprise, when I ordered my replacement and called Ventra to follow up on the balance transfer, I should say I ordered it online. I felt like that was probably the most efficient way to do that. Maybe that's just me being a millennial, but that just seemed like the easiest way to go about it. I spoke to 2 separate customer service representatives who told me that your policy did not include any pass on the card that might have been lost. That seemed odd to me since an expiring card's full balance, including an unlimited pass, can be transferred. The second customer service agent I spoke to simply said that I could have prevented my ventra card from being lost or stolen, but I couldn't prevent the expiration of the card. And I think anyone in this room that has ever had the trouble of having to replace one's lost or stolen wallet can agree, if you could have prevented it, you would have. While I had the resources to purchase a new ventra card pass, I know that there are many fellow commuters that rely on public transportation to get to and from work and school, and that this would have placed an undue financial hardship on them. I know my grandmother would have had that issue. I know in comparable cities like New York and Los Angeles, they have what they call balance protection. In New York City, they have decided on a daily standard rate of $4.04 and return to you that balance. In Los Angeles, they transfer over the days to a new card starting when you report the card lost or stolen. So all you have to do is call the Los Angeles Transit Authority, say, here's the new card I've purchased, and they just transfer that balance over. I'm not actually here to argue about the cost because I really truly believe that $105 is a completely reasonable cost for a monthly unlimited pass, and I'm happy to pay for it to use the wonderful services of the CTA. But I believe something needs to be done to correct this inconsistency. And if it's a matter of the service representatives not understanding the policy, that seems to be a training issue. So I don't know which it is, but I hope that you consider, this matter.
And thank you for bringing it to our attention. I actually spoke with the president. I think that will be rectified, so I'm going to have Dorval speak
Yes,
to that.
first of all, I'm going to have you meet with our Director of Revenue, Mike Gwynn, who's over the venture card program, and I'll have you meet with him after you finish talking to us. The other thing is, you mentioned in your request for comment the program in New York, which I'll be honest with you, I was not aware of until you mentioned it. I have directed my staff to look into that program and to see how we might apply a similar program here at CTA. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it is something that we should offer. As you pointed out, I do offer similar types of protections for other fare media, but I do not offer it for a monthly pass. I think that's something we need to correct, particularly since we're encouraging more and more of our customers to use monthly passes. And so we're going to follow up on the policy idea, but we're also going to address your specific situation. And I appreciate you taking the time to come down here and talk to us about it.
Thank you, President Carr. I used to live in New York City, so I think I had that mentality of, well, this must be like that in every other big city, and so I appreciate you taking a look at it. And the way they do it, again, we're talking about efficiencies, right? The reason you register your card is so that you have that protection and that if you lose it, you can just go to it. And the way that they do it, I'm sure your staff will tell you this, is that they actually just keep your card on file and they just transfer over that balance. If you have 20 days left, they send that money over to you so you can immediately purchase a new card. So again, I'm really excited. And just as a complete aside, I am a graduate student part-time over at Northwestern, and the policy work that you guys are doing is like absolutely incredible. So would love to chat with you about that separately. But anyway, thank you again for all of your time.
Thank you for coming down.
Thank you, Ms. Maffei. And that concludes our public comment section today, sir.
Okay, thanks, Greg. With the consent of the board, I would like to go out of order to new business. President Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may recall, give me a second here to find my notes. As you may recall, or as you know, we transport about 1.5 million people each day on CTA's buses and trains. The CTA often, therefore, becomes an integral part of our customers' lives, not only taking them where they need to be each day, but bearing witness to any number of daily occurrences, most of which are very ordinary and mundane. Last week, however, CTA experienced what we would consider to be a little miracle. On the morning of Wednesday, February 6th, a pregnant Ms. Guadalupe Lara and her husband boarded the number 9 Ashland bus to the hospital. I will point out that they are regular CTA customers and regularly ride CTA to go to and from their various chores over the course of a day. It seems, however, that in this particular case, the little girl couldn't wait to start her life's journey and take her first transit trip. Baby Samantha Lara arrived strong and healthy at about 8:30 a.m. Unfortunately, that was not at the hospital. We found ourselves in a situation where she actually gave birth on one of our buses. We, of course, are always very happy to welcome a new member of the CTA family. It usually doesn't happen in this particular format or fashion, but we did take the opportunity to acknowledge this happy occasion and put together a CTA-themed tote bag and presented a number of gifts to Mr. and Mrs. Lara at the UIC Medical Center the next day. You'll see a picture of the various things that we gave them as part of our welcoming to the new member of their family. During our visit, Ms. Lara expressed her gratitude to the number 9 bus operator, Michelle Reed, for helping them in their moment of need. Ms. Reed works out of our 74th Street garage and has been employed as a bus operator since 2012. I wanted to take this opportunity to personally thank Operator Reed for her quick thinking and calm demeanor during this most unique of experiences. While I do know that we train our operators to deal with a lot of different situations, I don't believe this is one of the things that we do a lot of training in. Her expert handling of a situation is something that not many bus operators will ever have the chance to experience. But it is a testimony to the essential service that we provide to the community in the myriad of ways that we positively impact the lives of our customers every day. As Terry mentioned earlier in this board meeting, good news travels nowhere, bad news travels everywhere. And we have, thousands of bus operators who work for us who do a terrific job every day delivering service to our customers and getting them to where they need to go. I believe in also celebrating the good news, because I certainly find myself having to respond to the bad news. And so I'm very appreciative and want to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Reed for her efforts and to thank her for providing the type of excellent customer service that we expect even during an unexpected or wonderful situation. And in recognition of her involvement in this particular situation, I also want to give her a presidential commendation pen, which is a pen that I give to CTA employees who have shown exemplary customer service throughout the system for a job well done. And with that, I'd like for Ms. Reed to stand for me to be able to present her with the pen and to get a picture of her with the board.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, really. All right. All right. Our next order of business today is the approval of the January 9th, 2019 board minutes. The minutes were previously distributed. Any comments? Hearing none, I'll now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of January the 9th, 2019. Would the secretary call the roll?
We need did we get a moved and seconded?
So moved.
Moved and seconded, okay. Reverend Miller? Yes. Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Reverend Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Silva? Yes. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved for the minutes with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. We will now take up executive session. It is my understanding that there will be executive session this morning, Karen?
Yes, Chairman, we will have a short executive session pursuant to Section 2, Paragraph C, Subparagraph 11 of the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you. I now entertain a motion to recess into executive session.
So moved. Second.
Reverend Miller? Yes. Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Reverend Patterson? Yes. Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes, and we're fine. I think it'll probably take about 15, 20 minutes, Karen, I would think. Something like that.
Okay, may I now have a motion to return to the open meeting of the Transit Board?
So moved.
Second.
Take it. Reverend Miller. Ms. Alvarez.
Yes.
Reverend Patterson. Mr. Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yes votes, and we're back in open session.
Thanks, Greg. The next item is Board Item Number 5A, a resolution setting the date and the time of the November 2019 Chicago Transit Board regular meeting. I now entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
On the resolution, Reverend Miller. Ms. Alvarez.
Yes.
Reverend Patterson. Mr. Silva. Yes. Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Director Miller.
Thank you. The Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery met earlier this morning to approve the October 2018 minutes. The committee also reviewed the following ordinance. One is authorizing an extension of bus route number 108 to the committee approved the ordinance and placed it on the numbers and recommended board approval of the numbers. That concludes my portion of this.
Thanks, Director
Excuse
Miller.
me, Chairman, let me insert that also the Committee on Strategic Planning heard a President's Report presentation on CTA's efforts during the most recent cold
Yes,
storm as well.
absolutely.
I'd written that earlier too, by mistake.
Absolutely. Okay. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Silva.
The Committee of Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this morning. The committee approved the January 2019 minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee also reviewed the following ordinance. An ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Board of Education of the City of Chicago for the sale and use of ventra cars and tickets for Chicago public schools. An ordinance authorizing a co-promotional advertising trade agreement with Bank of America N.A. for the 2019 Bank of America Shamrock Shuffle. An ordinance authorizing a licensing agreement with Cartronics to install, operate, and maintain automated teller machines at the designated rail station and employee locations. An ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Mobile Cubes LLC to install, operate, and maintain mobile charging vending machines at designated rail stations. An ordinance authorizing a license agreement with DMP Imaging Com America Corporation to install, operate, and maintain photo vending machines at designated rail stations. An ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Romaine Empire DBA Farmers Fridge to install, operate, and maintain refrigerated food vending machines at designated rail stations. An ordinance authorizing a first amendment to a sublease to DJM Logistics LLC of a portion of property located at 120 North Racine Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. An ordinance consenting to the assignment of a lease for property located at 4645 Northwestern Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, Brown Line. An ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Assessor Office of the County of Cook, Illinois, to access Geographic Information System data. The committee also reviewed 9 purchases and sales award recommendations. The committee approved the ordinance and the 9 contracts and placed all these items on the omnibus and recommended board approval of the omnibus. That concludes my report, Chairman Peters.
Thank you, Director Silva. May I have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Miller and Silva?
So moved. Second.
Second, Reverend Miller. Ms. Alvarez.
Yes.
Reverend Patterson. Reverend Patterson? Yes. Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is construction report. Bill?
Bill Mooney, Chief Infrastructure Officer, and joining me are
Juan Pablo Prieto, Senior Manager, Diversity Programs.
Chris Bouchel, RPM Chief.
So the first project I'd like to provide an update for you today on is our East Lake, Milwaukee, Illinois substation upgrade, which remains on budget and on schedule. Most of the activities at this point are coming to completion at Milwaukee substation as we are operating on all the new traction power equipment within that facility. At Illinois, we continue to refine the final completion of the substation there and all the interior elements that go with that. And most of the focus has shifted to our East Lake substation, where all the equipment is in fabrication and factory testing, and we are completing the remaining building envelope repairs. Here's some examples of that building envelope work at East Lake. This is a new masonry wall that's as part of the expanded footprint that I've mentioned in previous months in that facility. And here's some repairs to the roof membrane. It's really important in these traction power substations to have a really good roof and protect the electrical equipment from that water. Next project I'd like to talk about is our 95th Terminal Improvement Program. As you're all aware, last month we celebrated the opening of the North Terminal and beneficial use to our customers. A project of this size and complexity has a very detailed punch list, and so we'd like to take the opportunity over the next few months to keep you abreast of the closeout of this project. So over the last month, we've spent a lot of time focusing on opening up the preparing the North Terminal entrance on the north side for completion and opening, and prepping the South Terminal and the 96 interlocking for its future changes as well as part of the punch list. And here's some example of the North Terminal work. This is the north entrance again, which is being completed as part of that station opening. And here's some canopy work along that entrance as well. The next project I'd like to provide an update on is our Belmont. Yes, sir.
Yeah, before you move on, I want to say it was a great write-up in the Tribune. I think Blair Kamen ended up doing just a great write-up of the project and just the whole design and everything. And it's really one of those projects that you really have to go out and see it. I don't think, pictures always do it justice, but when you go out and see it. One last question. When will it completely be complete? What part of the year?
So we're working closely with the contractor to bring this to full completion, and clearly full closeout takes a long time to get through all the detailed items of punch list. But the majority of the work we're expecting to be completed in the upcoming months in early summer.
In which month?
And beginning of early summer.
Okay. And when is the Astor Gates artwork going to go in? Do we have a time yet?
I think he's planning to start that in March.
Yeah, he's expecting to start work on the radio station the beginning of March.
You may recall that part of the art exhibit itself, the actual construction of the station is part of the art.
Right.
So we are looking to do something in that time frame that would be sort of the unveiling of his artwork.
And I agree with you, Chairman. It is a stunning feature of the community, and if you haven't seen it yourself, you really should take a moment and appreciate it.
Yeah, when you complete the construction, when you get all of the amenities that are going to be there from the Astor Gates shop, I know we've got some vendors there as well, but the moment it is completely built out with all of the amenities, I mean, it's just going to be incredible, I think, as was highlighted in the Tribune article.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I should point out that both Bill and Chris basically gave Blair the tour of the facility and talked to him about what we were doing there, and I agree with you. I know from a lot of the stories he writes, he can be a fairly harsh critic of architectural work here in the city, but I thought it was a very positive story, and certainly he picked up on the features that we think make the station stunning, and one of the gems of our entire system now.
Yeah, because you really don't think 20,000 passengers coming through there every day, Pace, Greyhound, him, highlighting our buses and the direction they can go in, not to block traffic and all of that. Sometimes things that you sort of take for granted, but as he sort of went through each of those elements and how, this new terminal has accommodated a lot of that traffic, and, even the canopy where you no longer have to go outdoors and face the elements, you can go across the pathway to get to the other side from north to south. He did mention one thing, and I'm hoping that we're gonna correct it, the signage that looks like it's pointing down, like you need to go back. And I don't know if it's possible to do that.
No, Brian and I have already spoken about that, and we're looking at some options for that as well.
Excellent, okay.
So on the Belmont Jefferson Park Station Improvement Project, as we previously reported, the station work in Belmont and Jefferson Park is substantially complete, and most of the activities at this point are focusing around the bus turnaround improvements. At Jefferson Park, they're continuing to complete the repairs to the north terminal. First picture gives you an example of that concrete restoration there. And at Belmont, here's an example of the canopy steel fabrication, which has been fabricated over the detailed month. This is really the architectural piece that's key to that bus turnaround. And it's a fairly stunning, large-scale piece, which is currently in transit in various parts. It needs to be shipped in a series of loads because it's all oversized components. The first of which I've seen pictures of in Chicago, and I'm very excited to see on site. And here's an example of the preparation of that site itself. These are massive shoring towers that will ultimately support the canopy as they combine all those pieces together, fabricate them on the site, and ultimately roll it into place in its permanent installation in the terminal. And the last project I'd like to provide you an update on today is the Garfield Green Line Station renovation. We recently had an opening event at Garfield celebrating the completion of this work and ultimately celebrating a lot of the artwork that goes with this, that it becomes really an architectural piece of this station. Here's some photos from that opening. This project is substantially complete at this point, and this will be the last month we'll be reporting on it. I think as I take you through some of these, appreciating how much intrinsically the artwork of the station was designed by Nick Cave is so architecturally featured, and part of that community and representative of it is really just a stunning part of it. The Washington Park naming on the front. The elevator towers, which stand out from blocks away and really call upon that station and its features. West Tower. And here's some examples of longitudinal columns and a tile ceiling and how they kind of blend together. A more detailed photo of the tile ceiling. So if you haven't had an opportunity to see it in its fullness at this point, it's really wonderful, and you should take that moment and walk through it.
Bill, question, when
Yes.
is U of C expected to complete their work on the southern side?
So we continue to work with them. We're expecting kind of to finish up our rehab of that old station house for them in the next 6 to 8 weeks. We're working on some structural changes to the back that they need, and we've been kind of coordinating their designs, and they should be looking to get in there early summer.
Okay, I know what we're doing with the station, but behind it, there's an area behind it with grass and stuff. Last time I was out with Dorval, are we doing something in the back of it as well, where it's more of a grassy area, the alley that runs behind the station?
Yeah, UFC has some improvements that are tied to that as part of their installation.
Okay.
And we also have, come spring, as weather becomes dependent, we still have some painting activities out here and some landscaping and some things we need to do to finish off kind of the site.
Okay.
So.
Because this is the last time we'll be reporting on Garfield, we also wanted to follow up with the board and provide a DBE readout at the end of the project. Walsh conducted an extensive outreach campaign for this project, and they will finish at 30.43% DBE participation on a 30% goal. And this is a great example of one of our Green Line Educational Series participants also worked on the Garfield project, REA Masonry. So last month we gave you a great presentation on the success that we had on the workforce side. We also wanted to provide you an update on the DBE side as well.
That's great. Durbin, I don't know, I recall getting the money from the Senator Durbin. Did he make the event? This was one of those, was it a $50 million?
Yeah, we got a Tiger grant
Right.
for $50 million, one of the largest Tiger grants ever given. He was not at the event that we had for the opening, although he was invited along with Congressman Rush.
Okay.
I think that may have been when they were dealing with stuff in D.C. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, significantly less exciting than Garfield. The advanced contracts for RPM. Utility relocation and demolition both remain on budget. The utility relocation remains on time. The demolition remains tight to schedule. Keep going. Examples of some of the photographs. So, the big piece of work on the utility is moving things utilities out of the way for what will eventually be structures and stations for RPM. Big activity is trenching. You've seen pictures of the trenches. Also, the various intersections of those duct banks, coordinating with many utilities out there, predominantly ComEd, but we have some significant utilities for Department of Water Management, AT&T, Peoples Gas. Much of it underground, much of it a tangle of utilities that we're working through and continuing to work through in all weather. So the work is continuing as we speak, and you see two examples of it right here. Demolition continues tight to schedule, as I indicated, but not of any significance to the overall project. It's not really in the critical path of the larger design build contract to come. Some of that demolition is pretty tricky. This particular piece, we're demolishing a coach house that's close to our structure, that's close to other adjacent buildings. And I think as a mitigating factor to some of the scheduling challenges, this group too has worked throughout all the weather that we've had in the past weeks. So that weather has impacted construction to a marginal degree on this project. Broadway continues.
Before you go on to the next project, Karen, have we acquired all of the properties needed for the red purple metallization project?
27 out of 29. We have two that are still pending. And they continue on a path that will lead to our use of those properties. We're moving forward with necessary legal steps to acquire them if we can't. RPM Broadway substation upgrade continues on budget, tight to schedule again, but the schedule isn't in the critical path of the project. The work that was most important to the larger design build is the work that you saw pictures of several months ago where they were doing work on the track surface in that area to reroute some of the traction power cables and the section gaps between the various pieces of electrical infrastructure. That's all done. As these photographs show, they're in the house now. They're completing the installation of the equipment and some of the other utility grade things that are actually going in the substation. So the work continues. Not real it's all inside at this point, so or most of it is inside. Minor impacts to schedule here due to the cold weather, but it's really just utility grade work inside, running cables, installing the large, in this case, transformer, rectifier transformers, and other equipment that support our traction power on the rail right away.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take the opportunity to raise one more thing to you today as new directors. We had, as you alluded to earlier, an incident with Lakeshore Drive earlier this week that CDOT had some concerns about, and as we have over 50 miles of elevated structure that we regularly inspect and maintain with in-house resources and over 115 bridges on our property that we're responsible for, we're uniquely qualified to support an incident of such measure. And so we reached out to our partners and our sister agency at CDOT and offered our resources. And they ultimately took us up on it, and we did provide some support in restoring that with them. And so these are some examples of some of the work that our in-house forces help perform in that restoration. So.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that because the CDOT itself tends to contract out a lot of this work, so they don't necessarily have people or material on site that allows them to do an emergency repair of this nature. And so because this is an integral part of what we tend to do on a regular basis on our own system, not only keep the shorings available for us to deal with any issues we may have, but obviously have iron workers who are familiar with and are used to having to install and set that type of shoring up. And so I can tell you that Commissioner Scheinfeld sent a very hearty thank you to CTA and to their employees for helping them in a time of need when they needed to really respond, as you could tell from the pictures, almost immediately to this particular situation.
This is one of those where I say good news travels nowhere. There was no mention. So thank you for sharing this, because there was no mention of our participation in this, which is just incredible. And when you think about it, you're right, that the fact that we do have a workforce present that could step up and assist. So this is excellent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board for Bill, Juan, or Chris? All right, thank you very much. Greg, is there any new business to come before the board?
No more, sir.
All right, with no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We adjourn. Thank you.